Hello everyone. I'm very happy to have Dr. Nilesh Khare with us today in this conversation of Let's Talk series. Sir, thank you so much for being the guest on this platform, Let's Talk platform. And this platform brings a lot of value to the people amongst the industry, especially for the startups, for the existing organization, small organization, big organization. Dr. Nilesh Khare is basically a mentor and a leadership coach, and he's the one who helped a lot of along with the management colleges like IIMs and others, so many startups in the country. Right, so I'm very happy to have Dr. Nilesh Khare with us. Another thing, what you said that the blame game is going on in the room. So success has many fathers. Nobody is ready to own as an orphan, the failure. Another important thing, I was going through a case study in Harvard. So there was a case study which says that when the interviewer conducted interview amongst all the departmental head in the organization. So there were a sample size of various industry they have taken, and they asked a simple question. Okay, tell me the objective of your function. So there are certain common noises, common voices they were able to capture. This is a successful organization amongst any industry were having the objective and the vision of their function, which is aligning with the organizational the goal and the vision. And the failure organizations where people, different people, say for example, it's a operation head, or maybe the marketing person, or maybe a finance person, or maybe a person from HR. They all people, 4 or 5 people have different goals, which is absolutely not aligned. And what I feel that after going through this case study, that here the management and leadership plays a very important role. So what is your take on this in the scenario where the organization is of a mid-size or the big size organization which is there? And what do you recommend to the leaders, especially those who are strategy makers and those who finally give the signature on this final strategy?
So I think good question. I also represent Talos Partners, the UK-based consulting firm in India. They specialize on the culture side and strategic alignment for execution. You actually reminded me of what I learned from my advisor, JB Barney. He's a very well-known name in US academia and in strategic management world. He narrated this story. In his early days, he was teaching at UCLA, and he had a fortune to work with Bill Auchi. Bill Auchi is also another name, you know, the Theory Z. So he's the father of Theory Z. Bill Auchi was actually consulting Sony. So Jay told me this story, and he said that Sony was an exceptional organization in the 80s. He said when he visited Japan and saw Sony organization function, he said, you go to everybody, anybody, you pick anybody in the plant, you pick janitor. And you ask the janitor, what do you do? And he would say, I am cleaning the floor. My objective is to ensure that this floor is so clean that the product failure rates go down so that we can supply a good quality, affordable product to our customers. You were talking about alignment. I think you're right. Good organizations have teams or culture where everybody individually and within functional team understand their role in the context of what organization does for its customers. Like Christensen from Harvard, it's a very good paper. I would recommend people to read that paper. It says job to be done, customer's job to be done. You are in business because of that. Now, if your organization in business because of that, then each function is in a business because of that. And you should be able to say that. The another organization that comes to my mind is Southwest Airlines, where you could go to anybody and they would know what customer experience they stand for. And whether it's a flight attendant, whether it's a pilot, whether it's a ticketing agent, everybody would know how they need to behave with the customers because of the experience that they stand for customers. So you're right. let's step back and talk about what does it mean for the leaders. So let me borrow something that I learned from Talos Partners. I have been with them for about a year now. At Talos Partners, we talk about three legs of a stool for leaders. These three legs are the one is creating future, and another one is managing present. Now, these two legs, C.K. Prahlad also mentioned these legs in his conversations, that most of the executives are preoccupied with managing present at the cost of creating future. But at Talos Partners, we talk about the third thing too, and that's nurturing identity. We have done lots of surveys. We at Talos Partners, we have a small article. It's available on our website. It's called 7 Elements for Sustained Success. That has years of experience of watching organizations, leaders who have been able to create sustain, which is long-term success for themselves and their organizations. So what we have discovered that 70-80% of the time people are preoccupied with managing present. Why? My hypothesis is sometimes all CEOs and everybody else rises doing the job of a functional managers where they are primarily preoccupied with the present. They are good at that. They got the top seat as a reward of being able to manage present very well. They get immediate gratification by telling their teams who are now functionally leading that how they should be doing their job of managing present. And then they kind of have remorses that they don't have good team, people don't know how to manage present. But instead of coaching, instead of nurturing people in terms of, or instead of giving people a space how to manage present, they get preoccupied managing present, but they are also running away from creating future and nurturing identity. Creating future is thinking about where the consumer needs are moving, where the competitions are moving, where some of the critical resources such as technology is moving. What world are we going to be? Are we going to be relevant in that world? And then nurturing identity is actually about identifying your culture. What culture do you have? How do you shape that culture? Now, culture is the most difficult thing to understand and shape. So therefore, we leave it on, leave it alone. Say whatever happens. And that's where the real problem is. So when you talked about those organizations, those organizations are those because organizations also see leaders not living for their own glories. They see leaders living for the objective of the organization as defined in the context of the needs that is solving for the customer. And if you live in that realization, then you are not most important. For Southwest Airlines, the people who are actually handling customers at their customers' touch points are the most important people. Now, that changes your behavior, the way you deal with them, the kind of people, the reward that you give them, and everything else. So building HR and culture, thinking about people, nurturing that identity, that identity actually then translates into individual identity in relation to your job, your functional identity in relation to what you do for the customers, and it automatically becomes aligned. Now, without that, you can actually create an identity of ruthless competition where cutthroat, people cut each other, there's lots of politicking. It's more important who sits on the first line of your organizations, when the event happens, who gets bouquet, who gets to offer bouquets. Now, if you are actually running these kind of organizations, then of course you're going to have problems, and you'll survey and people won't say the right things.
Amazing. The huge dichotomy I see here, the people, those who are working on the ground, those who are actual implementer or executor, they feel that the people sitting in the boardroom, they are most important one. And actually, they are the most important one. I remember in my one of the multinational organization, we were having our India director, Dr. Safia Rizvi. She said that, we are sitting in the corporate, you all are managers and the part of a management. And she gave a one card to each and every one that please place this card in front of you. Am I really making a difference today in the life of a medical rep? to everyone, those who are sitting there. So whatever you are doing, are you really impacting that final, the producer for the organization so that they can take care of their customer very well?
Mm.
So wonderful thoughts. I think that this is the best conversation I ever had, especially on the startup and the entrepreneurship and the strategy. So
No, so let me,
yeah,
Pankaj, just let me just quickly add here one thing.
yeah,
Recently, we had a reward and recognition ceremony for one of the startups that I'm mentoring.
yeah,
I was very touched by this founding team because they came to me and they said, we have about 50, 60 people here, but we are recognizing only 15, 20 people, while we know that everybody has contributed. The founder's pain to not being able to recognize everyone was palpable. And I
mhm,
actually did tell them that let's recognize everyone and then let's reward some people for being outstanding. Let's create an environment when more and more people can come to demonstrate that outstanding performance. And then I was so touched when the founding CEO invited the housekeeping people and said that there are people who are invisible. We take them for granted, but they make it happen they make the life happen for us so that we can focus elsewhere. And we all clapped for
mhm,
them. My point is very simple. It is true for front end people that people who sit in the corporate boards are the most powerful people because the policy, the guidelines, the priorities that they decide, they have the power to make things happen. But
yeah,
to people who sit on the board, people who sit or the CEOs, the CXOs, I want to tell them that if the people who are at the front line, if they don't think that while they are powerful, but the people at the front line are more important,
yeah,
there's a difference between being powerful and important. And that's exactly my point. That it's the responsibility of the board to understand the people at the front are more important. Once that
yeah,
happens, the nurturing identity, you begin to think and you change. And when you
mhm,
change, I think the organization gets aligned with the needs of the strategy and it behaves differently.
yeah. The realization is the most important thing when someone go through such conversation and they realize what wrong am I doing? How can I really rework and reshape my strategy? I am a fond of Seth Godin, who do a lot of work, especially from the marketing front. And he also, put front, a lot of old case studies and how the brand failed and how the brand become successful. Bhaiya, would you like to share some of the references or the books or something, for a people to go through and learn? Or maybe any podcast also, like this is one of the podcasts which we are having this in this conversation.
I mean, I think there are many things that I can actually talk people. I think I find less time than what I know that I should go and read every day. There's a tons of material, and thanks to technology today, there are tons of things are available. Since we started with mm, the entrepreneurship and
Mhm.
strategy, let me recommend two books to people. Um, One I'm already using in the course that I'm teaching to executive MBA. There is a book by Vijay Govindarajan and Trish Kimball by the name 10 Rules for Strategic Innovators. It's for breakthrough
Mhm.
businesses, the businesses that are not standard, so new innovative businesses. The one thing that I like about that particular, now, entrepreneurs might feel that because that book is written as to why big corporations often fail in developing new innovative businesses.
Mhm.
But the chapter number 6, 7, 8, and 9th, they actually talk about learning, challenge of learning, and planning under uncertainty. Every startup goes through that. Now it goes back to strategic thinking and planning. Strategic planning is different from strategic thinking. If you read those chapters, you would actually learn how to think strategically and plan to learn and resolve uncertainty as you build your entrepreneurial venture. I think that's one book that I would recommend. On strategy, I'm a big fan of Richard Rumelt. His academic work, he was a professor at UCLA. He graduated, did his PhD from Harvard in 1976.
Yeah.
Uh, his book, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, is a good book to read. I have recommended it earlier as well. I would not
Yeah.
hesitate recommending once again. Anybody who wants to understand what a strategy is, because there are myths about a strategy, um, they should actually read that book on strategy. So if you combine strategy and uncertainty, often people say, we would know about a strategy, whether it's good or bad, once we get the result. If you get the result, it's useless because you have no choices to make anymore. Your ability to understand whether a strategy is good or bad much before the results arrive, that's important. So I think once you think what's good or bad strategy, and then uncertainty, planning under uncertainty, if you combine this, I think that's going to be very good for the other thing I would actually suggest the leaders particularly. I think it's increasingly important for leaders to become coaches.
Yeah.
In future talent in a competitive environment, you are not going to be able to manage the way that you have managed them. There is a book I read during my ACC coaching training program. It's called Tao of Coaching.
Yeah.
It's a book written by ex-McKinsey guy. It's a very good book, written like a novel. I can recommend some other books too. I think let me just recommend one more book on strategy and then leave it there.
Yeah.
There is a book that my advisor wrote. It's a novel again. It's a book called What I Did Not Learn in MBA or Business School, B School. I think it says What I Did Not Learn in B School. It's by Jay Barney and Trish Clifford. That book actually teaches you the limits of strategy under uncertainty. How far can strategy go? Where the limits of our frameworks are. So good strategy, bad strategy, limits to strategic thinking and frameworks, and then and the planning under uncertainty. And then leadership, leaders as coaches. I think that's the suite that I would want to recommend, whether you are a seasoned leader, whether you are a new entrepreneurial leader, or whether you are from family business.
Wonderful. So much of knowledge sharing. I'm really very, what I should say, mesmerized to hear your thoughts. Wonderful for bringing so much of, insights, especially from the strategy, from the entrepreneurship and all this front. And before I go for the last question, there is one more question. So much are happening from the technology front. Right. So now in this world of bringing a new startup kind of thing, and everything I think in the management or in the industry, everything is touched by the technology. We know Google, we know this Web3, we know so much things are happening from AR, VR, and now ChatGPT has also impacted all of us. How do you see when it comes to this entire startup world and the entrepreneurship? The effect and the impact of technology.
Excited and concerned. I think these are the two things that capture my state of mind. Excited because of the unprecedented possibilities. Chat GPTs, online educations, AI, VR. I know INSEAD, which is a good school from France, a very close friend of mine works for them. And then he was telling me as to how during COVID, they actually shipped AR, VR devices to all their MBA participants spread across the world, where they could now see the cases rather than read the cases. So they digitalize the cases and experience. You can put AR, VR, and you can immerse yourself in the context of how the case was unfolding. Amazing in terms of what you could do. Similarly about AIs and what can happen. So I'm excited about what we might see. Equally concerned because I see, at least in the short period of time, I see a massive socio-regulatory implication that would come from the technology development. Now, I actually think that one thing where as a human civilization we have miserably failed, and it's most powerful, is how we get governed. So political system of all kinds, where we choose a representative who design regulations, that's the most inefficient system that we know of. And that's the reason we see a lot of manipulation by political leadership of all kinds across the globe.
Yeah.
That's my concern. because the technology is going to lead to the challenges of employment and engagement, even for a skilled worker. There are several people who have the opinion that this is not the first time humanity is facing it. We had a problem during industrialization. We had a problem when computers came. We had a problem, but the better and good jobs got created. But none of these jobs that, or none of previous threats threatened us for our cognitive abilities. We are now facing where we have the machine robots or AI generated robots. They are far more capable and more efficient in doing everything that a human could do. There would be a very small thing that's going to be left out, which means that there's going to be now the countries that are hugely populated, they would find it difficult to remain as competitive, generate jobs for their people. They are not rich, so they are going to have problems. So all poor and hugely populated countries would have problem in transitioning people for reskilling, helping people with some universal pay, because where would the pay come from? Now, this can actually lead to a lot of social unrest. Now, I also see something when I read Taleb, when I get into the Taleb kind of world and think about how the humanity has evolved across thousands of years. Sometimes I think that AI, chat, robot, technology, and everything else would probably make this world very beautiful for a billion people, 100 years from now, 200 years or 300 years from now. But today we are 8 billion people.
Yeah.
And how those 8 billion people today, we are not skilled very well. Several people are dependent on the very different kind of skills, and everything else is going to get done by people. That's where the demand comes from, the Western societies. If they begin to manufacture, they begin to rely more on technology. Even if the poor and hugely populated middle income countries don't adopt technology, they will still not find demand from outside. And that would create a problem. So I think that today's technology has gotten us where a billion or a half a billion people can live like gods on earth. We can create a paradise when people don't have to do anything. But then 8 and 9 billion people that we are going to be, that's tough one. So how do we manage our socio and regulatory challenges to smoothen the transition for everybody? I think that's a bigger challenge. And I think that challenge we can begin to see in just about 5-10 years.
Yeah.
So that's the work.
Because the pace is too fast,
Huge. Huge.
So now this has, again provoked one more question. What would you like to recommend to, if government or maybe the regulators, especially to something, some do's and don'ts, especially, what are the 3-4 pointers, if at all they're coming into your mind, something?
I don't know. I can only request, urge, or hope. Right? It's very difficult to recommend something to people who very insensitively manipulate their subjects. That's how I see politicians, and pardon me for doing that.
Yeah.
But my request and hope is that they would do understanding the need to remain fair to everybody. There are the images that go out. They talk about the equity and equality. You probably have seen those images, right? Where there is a wall and the people of different sizes, and then different people have different kind of support so that all can see beyond that wall. Right? I think human society is like that. The discrimination, unfairness, particularly how you can make that discrimination and the bias legal. Now, that's going to create a problem for several people. And human society is also coalition oriented. So we have subgroups and groups. So, I mean, we are seeing this, right? If we have shown two things where we are very lousy, our ability to choose our leaders, particularly political leaders, we are very lousy in that. And our ability to see larger good and not get carried away by either individual or subgroup interests. I think we are very lousy there as well, particularly for immediate needs.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a tough one. It's not going to be easy. But my hope is that the regulations that come to control humanity comes together to pace the adoption of technology in a way that sustains the ecosystem, socio-economic ecosystem, because it can collapse.
Yeah. Wonderful. So much to learn from you, especially on many fronts. Again, before I go for the last question, one more second last question.
Fair
How do
enough.
you see the EQ and coaching? Because you have been into this coaching and you spoke a little bit about the EQ also. So from a leadership front, you said that the leader need to be very good coach, and it is the need of this hour if they need to really talk and work with the millennials, the Gen Z, and the next generation. So how much would you like to say something, for the leaders from this front?
I think it's, so let me actually first begin by admitting this, that in my own life also, the recognition of importance of EQ was actually a bit late. And I think EQ term also just emerged during my lifetime, at least, in the world where I lived or live. So, but I would say that EQ is definitely most important. Your ability to understand your emotions and other emotions and then channelize them effectively is what sums up EQ for me. Mm, So, uh, uh, your brilliant answers, your I are on the logic side. I have preference for logic, and when I see logic, sometimes I suspend the ability to see emotions. Uh, so I would accept my limit, and because I understand the pain of that limit, I want to urge other people that if you want to be a leader, it's important that you have see, two things people don't understand this very well and get misled, like entrepreneurship. They think entrepreneurship is about being your own boss, becoming famous, or having a lot of money. No, entrepreneurship is about passionately solving problems and pain points for others in a way that their willingness to pay for it is more than the price that you would charge, and your ability to do this at a cost which is below the price. That's entrepreneurship. Similarly, if you think about leadership, to me, the leadership is your ability to master the EQ, so your and others' emotions, and you see that, and then not get caught in your own self-interest. If you have self-interest, that you are not a leader. And if you do not have understanding your own emotions, then you can delude yourself in thinking that you are actually there for others. But in reality, you are actually being self-serving. So you see the narcissism all along, right? I mean, it's easy for everybody to see it. Nobody would say, emperors have been naked all along. And in today's world, you see very clearly as to why emperors remain naked. If we need a little kid who can actually say, I'm sorry, you are naked. So my
Amazing. And
leaders, my recommendation to leaders is don't become naked emperor.
very nice. Anything else if we are missing on, which is there in your mind, would you like to share with our audience?
So I think so. The caveat I think I can say, Pankaj has graciously invited me to be here, allowed me to use the platform to share thoughts that are the messages that I share with others. I have to acknowledge that these things I have learned from other people who have very generously asked me when I asked them, how do I repay you what I have learned from you? And they only asked me to pay forward. So it's my opportunity to pay forward. So thank you so much for that. I hope it's useful for others.
I would say I have not seen. Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
my just last comment
Please.
is that I also want to kind of express the limits of what I know. I wish social science and my opinion and my objective of life were like physics. They are not. So whatever I have said based on what I read, what I learned from others, what I saw in my own in others' experience that I could witness. This may have limits too. So take whatever I am saying with at least pinch of salt. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
I would say, and I would request if anyone from the Niti Aayog and these people, those are policy makers, are they are going through this conversation. I feel that the people like you, we should have in the policy making, the committee or that sort of people are really required. Those who have the mix of both, right? Those who understand the EQ, those who understand technology, those who understand how the evolution overall this happened and how we are heading. So very much important and very sensitive things which very nicely you articulated. And thank you so much for bringing a lot of value to this podcast. And I'm sure this will really help all the people, those who wanted to start their startup, their journey into the entrepreneurial journey, and for the current organization and the leaders also, those who are heading some the bigger, larger, and maybe any MSME or any organization. Thank you so much, Bhaiya, and we would meet again on this platform. So more, every time I'm thinking the thoughts what you are sharing, it was so provoking. It brings a lot of other thoughts. So this is the podcast which was absolutely 100% unscripted. Yeah. So and the answers are coming so naturally from and I really owe the way you said that it is all the contribution of the books and the people and the experiences what you had. Thank you so much. And
Thank you so much,
see,
Pankaj, for having me. It has been my pleasure. Thank you so much. I wish you and your podcast very well.
yeah, thank you so much.